Welcome to the Bible Bots podcast, where AI meets ancient wisdom. Join us as we explore scripture, breaking down verses and uncovering insights to enrich your faith journey with fresh, modern perspectives. Let's plug in, power up, and dive into the timeless teachings of the Bible together.
All right, diving deep into James 4 today. A chapter with a lot to say, big themes. And we've got our sources to help unpack it all.
Yeah, it's really incredible, isn't it, how much this one chapter covers? Desire, conflict, humility, even this whole idea of worldliness. What does that even mean for us today, you know?
That's what I'm curious about. It's so easy to, just skim these verses and think, okay, be nice, got it. But James, I think he's going deeper to the root of why we act the way we do.
Oh, absolutely. He starts off in verses 1 and 2 by asking what causes fights among you. And his answer isn't other people. It's your desires that battle within you.
Whoa, that's a game changer right there.
For sure.
So it's like he's saying internal conflict, that spills outward. And that makes me think about how we try to solve conflict. Maybe we need to, look inward first instead of focusing on the external problem.
Exactly. And James, he gets pretty intense about the consequences, of these desires that we don't keep in check. He links them to violence, even uses the word murder.
Hold on. Murder. He's not saying, you'll kill someone because you're jealous, is he?
It's strong language, yeah. But think about it. Cain and Abel.
Right.
The story in Genesis. Jealousy that leads to bloodshed. It's James is tapping into something very deep there. That link between desire and destruction.
So our desires, they can be like weapons. Even if we don't, physically hurt someone. It makes me think about how we idolize things. Today, especially. Success, possessions, relationships even. Maybe that's a form of murder, too, in a way, because it can destroy our peace or hurt others.
That's a really insightful connection, and it leads right into the next thing James brings up, prayer, in verse 3. He says, we don't receive because we ask wrongly to spend it on our passions.
So our prayers, they can be selfish. Is that what he's saying? That God won't answer those kinds of prayers?
Well, think of it this way. A child asking for something harmful, a loving parent wouldn't just give it to them, right? God knows our hearts. Sometimes what we think we want isn't good for us.
Right. Makes sense. So we should pray for God to change our desires, not just, fulfill them.
Exactly. And then we get to verse 4, where James uses adultery to describe friendship with the world.
Yeah. Whoa. That feels a bit jarring. Adultery is a serious accusation. What's he getting at here?
He's using that Old Testament imagery of Israel being unfaithful to God by turning to other gods. Our love for the world, he's saying, it can become a rival to our love for God, for its values, pursuits, distractions.
It's not just about, avoiding certain behaviors then. It's about where our loyalty lies. Are we more devoted to work or social media, chasing the next thing? Is that, giving those things the devotion that should be God's?
That's a powerful way to think about it. And it's, adultery like that, it can be sneaky. Not always some big, obvious sin. It's the small shifts, in our priorities. The slow creep of worldliness, pulling us away from what really matters.
Wow. Okay, that really changes how I see that verse. Now, verse 5, this one gets kind of cryptic. It says, he yearns jealously over the spirit that he has made to dwell in us. But I can't find that quote anywhere else.
You're right. Not a direct quote. But it does capture this essential truth about God. He cares. He's not indifferent. He really wants us to be fully devoted to him. God
longing for us. I love that. Not some, distant, uncaring deity. He's personally invested in us, which makes the whole choosing the world thing even more, poignant.
Yeah, it does. Adds another layer to it all. And this is where the theme of humility starts to come in, right? In verse 6, James says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
So humility is at the antidote to this adultery in our hearts. If we're humble, we won't be as tempted by all those worldly things.
I think there's a strong connection, yeah. Think about it. Pride makes us self-sufficient, focused on ourselves. But humility, it helps us recognize we need God. We depend on his grace.
It reminds me of Jesus blessing the meek in that Sermon on the Mount. It's like the opposite of what the world tells us, isn't it? The world says, strive, climb, be the best. But James and Jesus, they're saying real strength comes from surrender.
It's a key takeaway, yeah. And it leads right into the practical stuff James says in verse 7. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
So it's not just a feeling. It's about doing something, right? Aligning ourselves with God's will. actively.
Exactly. And he gives us more, verse 8 keeps going with this. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. There's a back and forth there.
Like a dance. We step toward God, he steps toward us. But then he also says, cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts.
Yeah. It's a reminder that this moving toward God, it requires change on the inside too, not just external actions. It's about the state of our hearts.
Okay, so this next part, I always get stuck here. Verse 9, it says, be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. That's heavy, depressing even.
Yeah.
Are we not allowed to be joyful as Christians?
It does sound intense, right? But think about it in the context of what we've been talking about. Worldliness, adultery of the heart. Maybe this morning isn't about denying joy. It's about grieving the ways we've turned away from God, the damage we've caused.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Like a healthy sorrow,
Yeah.
Recognizing how serious sin is and the consequences.
And that's where true repentance starts, doesn't it? Acknowledging our need for forgiveness, for God's grace.
Which leads to the promise in verse 10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you.
It's powerful, real exaltation, true fulfillment. It comes from God, aligning ourselves with his will, not chasing after success or what the world thinks.
So even in all this, repenting, mourning, there's hope. God will lift us up when we humble ourselves.
Exactly. And notice, this idea of humility keeps coming up, right? It's the key to overcoming worldliness, to receiving grace, experiencing true joy.
Absolutely. But then, James, he throws in another twist, doesn't he? Verses 11 and 12, talking about judging others.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't hold back there. He says, do not speak evil against one another, brothers. And then reminds us that there is only one lawgiver and judge. Who are you to judge your neighbor?
Basically saying, worry about yourself, leave the judging to God.
It's a powerful call to focus on our own walk with God.
Yeah.
To let him handle the judging. It makes me think, with social media and everyone having an opinion, how often are we judging others without even realizing it?
Wow, that's a great question, one we should all be asking ourselves. We've covered a lot here in this first part of James 4. Worldliness, humility, judgment. Where do we go from here?
Well, James isn't done. He's got more to say about presumption. And it's all connected to what we've been talking about. So, we talked about worldliness, right? That pull of the world that can kind of make us stray from God. But now James, he shifts gears. He's going to talk about this idea of presumption.
Yeah, verses 13 through 17. It feels different, doesn't it? Less about, outside temptations, more about our attitude on the inside.
Exactly. He starts off, verse 13, talking to those who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Sounds pretty normal, right? Making plans.
Yeah, totally. Who hasn't, made a to-do list? Or thought about what they want to do next year. What's wrong with that?
It's not planning itself. That's the issue. It's that assumption that we're in control. James is saying, hey, we often forget the bigger picture when we're making our plans.
Like we're playing God, deciding how things will go.
Right. And then he uses this really powerful image in verse 14. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes.
Okay, wow. That's a bit harsh. He's not holding back. Is he like, hey, remember, you're going to die. All those plans could disappear tomorrow.
He's reminding us, of our limitations. It's a theme that you see all over the Bible. Life's just short, the unpredictable. Like those old proverbs about not bragging about tomorrow. We don't know what a day will bring.
Yeah. Man makes plans, God laughs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not supposed to be cynical, right? It's more about having some humility.
Exactly. Planning isn't bad. It's about the perspective, right? And that's where verse 15 comes in. James offers another way. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.
Ah, okay. Acknowledging God's in charge, that our plans, they depend on his will. But does that make us passive? Like just sit around waiting for God to tell us what to do?
No, it's not passivity. It's more like partnership. We still plan, work hard, but we hold those plans lightly, open hands, trusting that God might have something else in mind, something better.
I get it. Not dictating, but collaborating. We're not the boss of the whole project.
Yeah.
But we get to, be part of it with the ultimate CEO. But then verse 16, it kind of throws a wrench in things. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil.
Sounds harsh, yeah. But it's just the other side of what we've been saying, right? When we think we're in control, when we brag about what we've done, like it was all us. We're kind of denying God's role.
Taking the credit for what really belongs to him.
Right. And that kind of boasting, it comes from a heart that's, well, maybe hasn't fully grasped God's grace. and our own limits. This whole presumption thing, makes me think about how we often relate to God.
How?
Well, sometimes it's like a vending machine, isn't it? We put in our prayers, good deeds, expect him to give us what we want. But that's not how it works. True faith is about surrender, trusting God's goodness, even when things, don't go as planned.
So more than just avoiding certain actions, like bragging. It's about a deeper trust, even when we don't understand.
Yeah, you got it. And that leads to how this section ends, verse 17. Powerful stuff. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin.
Okay, you've heard it. Now do something. Knowing isn't enough. You got to act.
Exactly. And notice how this ties back to everything, right? Actions matching knowledge, our will lining up with God's. It's not just agreeing with the idea. It's about faith that changes our lives from the inside out.
So these two themes, worldliness and presumption, they're linked.
Yeah.
They both come from a heart that hasn't truly surrendered to God, to his authority, his goodness.
That's a great point, and this sets up what James will talk about next, how to actually live this out. Humility and surrender, what they look like in practice.
Okay, I'm ready to hear it. Let's dive into the last part of this deep dive. Okay, so we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive into James 4. Worldliness, presumption. Wow. A lot to think about.
Yeah, really powerful stuff. And it's not just, theory. It's about how we actually live day to day.
Exactly. So, big picture, what's James's message here for us, today?
I think he's saying true faith, it means our lives line up with God's will. Not just what we do, but our hearts, our thoughts too. It's about surrender, humility, recognizing, we're not in control.
And that surrender, it's not about like giving up our dreams or anything, right? It's more about trusting God's plan, even when it doesn't, make sense to us.
That's it, yeah. It's like we get to be co-creators with God. We bring our stuff to the table, our passion, our ideas, but we hold it all loosely, knowing he might have something even better planned.
It makes me think about all the times I stress over things I can't control, trying to force things to go my way. What if I just surrender those anxieties to God? Would that free me up to actually enjoy things more?
That's a great question. And I think Jews would say, yeah, keep asking yourself that. What would it look like to really trust, to have that confidence in God, even when things are, hard?
Not easy, that's for sure. But there's something, appealing about letting go of that need to control everything.
And that's where you see worldliness and presumption, they connect. When we're all caught up in what the world wants, our own plans, our ambitions, it's like we're putting ourselves in God's place. My will be done instead of, thy will be done.
It's like we go from being God's child to trying to be God.
Yeah, and that's where things get messed up. But when we humble ourselves, surrender to God's will, that's where his grace comes in, his guidance, his power.
Like we're, plugging into a power source instead of running on our own limited batteries.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so hopeful. It's not about rules or living in fear. It's about relationship with a God who loves us, who knows us better than we know ourselves, who wants us to have a good life, a truly good life.
So as we finish up here, what's the one thing you'd want our listener to take with them?
I'd say don't just read James 4. Let it read you. Let it challenge you, what you think, what you value, what you want deep down.
Yeah.
Ask yourself what needs to change in my heart, my attitude to really be aligned with God. And then take a step, even a small one, towards surrender. It makes all the difference.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for walking us through this. It's given me a lot to think about, and more importantly, to try and actually do.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, you're not alone in this, God's with you every step. He offers his grace, his guidance as you seek to live a life of humility and surrender.
And to you, listener, thanks for being here with us. May you be blessed as you, continue to explore God's word and experience the power of his love in your own life.
Thanks for joining us on the Bible Bots podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern insight. We hope today's discussion brought fresh perspective and inspiration to your faith journey. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us next time as we dive deeper into the timeless teachings of the Bible. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.